Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Council Chambers here at Vancouver City Hall for today's council meeting. It's September the 19th, 2017, and our first council meeting since the summer break. First, I'll acknowledge we're on the unceded homelands of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and thankful to our First Nations hosts here in the city. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Robertson's in the chair. Councillor Louis. Councillor Stevenson. Here. Councillor Deal. Here. Councillor Jang. Here. Councillor Reimer. Councillor Carr. Here. Councillor Ball is absent from the chamber. Councillor Affleck. Here. And Councillor DeGenova. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And before we dive into our agenda, I just wanted to, on behalf of our council, congratulate Councillor DeGenova for a new baby girl and her family, Lillian, born while you were you and your whole family on the baby girl. And so we council are required to meet in camera later this week. Reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would someone like to move that motion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Next on the agenda is minutes from our last set of meetings. Firstly, the public hearing July 18th and 25th, 2017. Any corrections to those minutes? No corrections. Move Councillor Deal, seconder for that. Councillor Louis, any debate? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. The second set are from the regular council meeting, July the 25th, 2017. Any corrections? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Those are adopted. The third set from the regular council meeting that followed Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities, July the 26th. Any corrections to those minutes? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And those carry for adoption. And fourth, minutes of the special council meeting that was held on August the 4th. Any corrections to those? Moved Louis, seconded by Deal. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. That is all of the minutes from July and early August into the record books. So we are on to our consent agenda, and we have two communications, one administrative report and 5 policy reports before council for consideration. Council may adopt all these items collectively in a single motion. Does any member wish to hold any of these items for debate or questions to staff? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't intend to hold the reports, but I just wanted to put on public record that I have sent questions to staff on 3 of the referrals to public, 3 reports regarding referral to public hearing, and they've agreed that they will answer those questions at the time of the public hearing.
Excellent. Thank you. That is a more efficient way of doing the questions, so thanks for taking that route. Anyone else wish to hold any of the reports for questions or debate? Councillor Louis is ready to move a motion, moving all of the reports, the recommendations contained within, seconded by Councillor Deal. Any debate on the consent agenda motion? We're ready for the question. All those in favor, the consent agenda? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. And no one stated any conflict of interest on any of those, so that means we have adopted all the recommendations in the following reports. Firstly, Communications 1 is 2017 Council Meeting Schedule Revision, and number 2 is 2018 Council Meeting Schedule. The administrative report is the 2017 Creative City Summit. That's a travel approval request, October 2017. And the policy reports are, firstly, repeal of heritage bylaws, 1017 to 1027 Kiefer Street, referrals to public hearing. Number 2 is CD1 rezoning, 8242 Oak Street. Number 3 is CD1 rezoning, 2221 to 2223 Main Street. And report 4 is CD1 rezoning, 124 Dunlevy Avenue, that's Rawdon Lodge. And the last policy report approved is CD1 rezoning for A 2165 to 2195 West 45th Avenue, and B, 2205 to 2291 West 45th Avenue, and heritage designation of the Ryerson Dunbar United Church. Okay, so those are all approved recommendations within, and that means that we are on to our bylaws, and we have 20 bylaws on the agenda for consideration by council. Bylaw 19 has been withdrawn. I'll just ask if any member wishes to hold any of the bylaws for debate, separate vote, or for conflict of interest. And let me just go through a couple here. Bylaws 6, 8, 11 to 16, and 19 to 21. We have council members who are not present at the related meetings and who have not previously advised they have reviewed the proceedings. So they may only vote on the bylaws if they now confirm that they have reviewed the proceedings. So bylaw 6, public hearing enactment bylaw from a hearing that was held May the 24th, 2016. Councilors Jang, Reimer, and I were absent from the public hearing. And I'll check. Councilor Jang, have you reviewed and will you be voting?
Yes, I have reviewed the materials and will be voting.
Thank you. And Councilor Reimer?
Yes, I have, and yes, I will be voting.
Thank you. And I have not and will not be voting on bylaw 6. Bylaw 8 is a public hearing enactment bylaw from a hearing held Feb 21st, 2017. Councilor Stevenson and I were absent from the public hearing. Councilor Stevenson, have you reviewed the proceedings? Will you be voting on the bylaw?
I have and I will.
Okay, and I have not and will not be voting on 8. Bylaw 11 is a public hearing enactment bylaw from a hearing held July the 18th, 2017. Again, Councilor Stevenson and I were absent from the public hearing for that item as well. Councilor Stevenson, are you going to be voting on that one?
I will.
You will, and I will not. Bylaw 12 is a public hearing enactment bylaw from the hearing May 16th, 2017. And the decision on the application was made at the regular council meeting June the 13th, 2017. And Councilor DeGenova, you were absent from that regular council meeting. Have you reviewed the proceedings? Will you be voting on the enactment?
No, I have not, and I will not.
Okay, and finally on bylaws 13, 15, and 20, they are public hearing enactment bylaws from a hearing held October the 18th, 2017. That's 16, October 18th, 2016. And Councilors Affleck, Ball, and Louie were absent from the public hearing on that item. So Councilor Affleck, have you reviewed and will you be voting?
I have and I will.
Okay, Councilor Ball is not present, and Councilor Louie.
I have and I will.
Okay, I was wrong there. We have a couple more to check on here. Bylaw 14. Public hearing enactment November 3rd, 5th, 17th, and 24th, 2009. And the decision on the application was made at regular council meeting December 1st, 2009. That's a while ago now. Councilors Jang, Louie, and I were absent from the public hearing and did not vote at the regular council meeting where the decision was made. Councilors Affleck, Ball, Carr, and DeGenova were not on council at the time of these meetings. But I'll check with you anyway in case you took it upon yourselves to go through all the proceedings and are now going to vote on the enactment. Councilor Affleck?
I did and I will.
Okay, and Councilor Carr?
Yes, I did. They were very extensive tapes, and I will.
Thank you. Councilor DeGenova?
No, I was not on council at the time, and I won't be voting. Thank you.
And Councilor Jang?
There was nothing else to do this summer, so I did, and I will.
Thank you. Councilor Louie?
I did and I will.
Okay, and I did not and will not be voting. Councilor, or bylaw 16. Public hearing enactment from a hearing held June the 13th, and Councilor DeGenova and I were absent from the public hearing on that item. Councilor DeGenova, have you reviewed the proceedings? Will you be voting?
I did not, and I will not.
Okay, and I'm in the same boat with that one. I will not be voting. Bylaw 21 is a public hearing enactment from a hearing held September 24th, 2013. Councilor DeGenova was not on council at the time of public hearing, but on the off chance you did review the proceedings, and will you be voting?
I was not on council at the time. I will not be voting.
Okay. And that is all. That was a very extensive list of bylaws and details. Thanks to staff for all the work to organize all that. That that clarifies who's voting on which bylaws, so I'll ask for someone to move adoptions of bylaws 1 to 21. Councillor Jang, a seconder for that. Councillor Louie. Any discussion on the motion moving the bylaws, adoption of them all? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That carries unanimously, and that means that the list of the approved bylaws can be viewed on the city's website. And we are on to administrative motions. We have 6 administrative motions on the agenda. They are to be moved by Councillor Jang and seconded by Councillor Stevenson. Any debate, discussion? Councillor Stevenson, did you have something on this? Or it's a holdover. Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually do have a question regarding this that I hope the city manager may be able to answer. And it is on the administrative motion 1, the lease boundary adjustment, volumetric portion of road under the Georgia Viaduct. So I understand that that there will be a larger, that we are blocking off and a piece of the road for increased use for the underground parking. And I'm just wondering, that will obviously be then operated by the landowner. I'm wondering why there is no adjustment in the rent to the city, given that there will be, in effect, more land of the city under the purview of the landowner rather than the city itself.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm actually not in a position to provide an answer on that at this point, so I'd be happy to have the staff come in and answer that question. If you give me a few minutes, we can circle back to it, or I can provide a written response, however you'd like, or we can do it later in the agenda.
That's fine. I mean, I'm not prepared to vote on that particular one. I can vote on the others, but until I have the answer to that, I'm not prepared, Mr. Mayor, to vote on that.
Okay, we do have, it has been moved and seconded, so it would be upon someone to refer or extract that if you're interested in doing that.
I would be happy to move to extract administrative motion 1 to be dealt with later in the agenda when an answer to my question can be provided.
Okay, that, Councillor Jang, is that a, or is the floor amenable to that being a friendly amendment? Okay, is it better, Madam Clerk, should we just refer the whole motion to later in the motion, or should we approve the rest? Approve the rest, okay. So that, in terms of an amendment, it's just extracting that one and referring it to later in this meeting. Okay, everyone's clear on that? We'll talk about it once we have staff to answer those questions. So anything else, anything further on the balance of those administrative motions? Seeing none, we'll call the question on the rest. All those in favor of the administrative motions 2 through 6? Any opposed? None opposed. Those carry unanimously, and we'll see administrative motion 1 before we close this meeting, hopefully. And we're on to motions on notice. Okay, so we've got 2 motions on notice today. One is a request for leave of absence. That is for medical reasons. Councillor Ball, for any meetings to be held September 20th and 21st. Do we have a mover? Councillor Genova seconded. Any discussion? She needed tonight as well. Okay. That's not, so it's meetings to be held September 21st and September 19th. Public hearing? Okay. We're all clear on that. Ready for question? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. And the second is the non-market housing projects data set. And that is to be moved by Councillor Affleck. And Councillor DeGenova will second that. And Councillor Affleck, to introduce your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this motion is really related to what I think is necessary for us to make decisions related to policy moving forward. It's always important to know where we are in order to know how to move forward. And I was surprised to learn as I searched the site, the website, that this kind of information is not available. And you'd think it were, especially given our priority of having the open catalog available, open data catalog being a priority at this council. The fact that we cannot provide a clear number of how many social housing units we have in the city, and an easy place for us to find that, is challenging not only to us as policy decision makers, but also to staff, I believe. And I have spoken to staff about this, and they have encouraged me and thought this was a good idea. It's pretty nerdy in a lot of ways. This is about data, and it's not meant to be political in any way. It's really something that I think will be very helpful for all of us, and for staff, and for the public to be able to understand where all these units are in the city. We talk a lot about goals that we have as a city, and I think it's important to, as I said, to know where we're going. And we don't know if we can't figure out where we're going and make policy decisions if we don't know where we are. Part of the data that I think would be required on this and should be included on this would be the project name, the exact street address, occupancy date, the number of units, the type of units, the number of units by bedroom, the housing focus, whether it's families or seniors, singles, the ownership, if it's city-owned or privately owned. Perhaps we might want to add provincially, what the provincial relationship is in there. And actually, I'd like to add, potentially from a request from a resident and a member of the community said that it would be good to add operating agreements into, so with your pleasure, I'd like to add in the second to last bullet, links to related City of Vancouver documents and reports such as lease agreements, development permits, rezoning approvals, and operating agreements. The operating agreements then will provide us information on what the relationship is in this development or in this building, whether it's provincial, city, federal, whatever it might be. So I'm looking for your support today. I think this is a motion that, as I said, is apolitical. It's really about providing the kind of data that I think we all could take advantage of and use for making good, solid policy decisions here at City Hall, and for the public to know of all the units that we have in the city. Where are they? What kind of units are they? In their circumstances, would they fit in? And for staff, obviously, as part of their reporting to us, in the reports, we'll be able to refer to this document when we're making our decisions, which should be always evidence-based. So I'm looking for your support on this motion, and I hope I have it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Affleck. To the motion, Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor Robertson, and thank you to Councillor Affleck for bringing this forward. Indeed, the question of housing data is one that has been a challenge for the open data site to deal with. We actually currently have 8 separate databases available on the City of Vancouver website related to housing, and so for that reason, while very supportive of the intent of the motion, I'm concerned about creating a 9th database, which functionally would, in my opinion, make it more difficult for people to find this information as opposed to easier. So I've got a referral motion to staff, and the referral motion would be to refer to staff in order for staff to bring a recommendation back with the housing reset as to how to meet the intent of the motion in relation to providing the information requested in an open data format with the least amount of duplication. I note that quite a bit of this information is available in VanMap. Some is available in the rental standards database, which lists every, yeah, exactly. So non-market housing, there's a data set available in the open data set already. You can go to the housing section of the website and look up a list of all the social housing in one part, all the non-market housing in another, and all the market rental in yet another. And then, of course, we have the rezoning and development permit application databases, which are separate. My hope would be that this motion helps trigger the process of combining everything into one database that includes information on all the multi-unit, whether they be social, non-market, market, or otherwise, because I think the public doesn't necessarily define, the way these terms are defined by the public can be a bit malleable. So I'd prefer that people have the opportunity to find it all in one place, along with the rental standards, because I know as a renter, this is also an issue, is what status the building is in and what the nature of the landlord and upkeep of the building is. So, however, I think the easiest thing to do is send it all back to staff and have them bring back a proposal for how to combine it all into the simplest possible format for people. I also would note, while I understand many people use Excel and the XLS format. It's not considered to be an open format by virtue of the proprietary nature of Microsoft. So while I think it's an important one to have for its ubiquity, I would hope that we also have a truly open format.
Okay, so we've got a motion to refer, which needs a seconder. Councillor Stevenson will second that, and I've got the same speakers list. Councillor DiGenova, you want to speak to referral?
Yes, I'll speak to the referral. I was going to speak to the motion, but as I understand, Councillor Reimer would like to refer the motion to staff, and that there may be a way to still salvage having this data at people's fingertips. I will support the referral. I think that it's very important that this is something that comes forward, and some of the reasons for that, and I appreciate Councillor Affleck putting forward the motion, is this is something that as a liaison to the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee, we hear about quite often. People don't understand or know where the accessible units in the city are. I mean, that's just one example. There's also seniors housing. There's knowing how many social housing units, non-market housing units, or units even at the Hills income rates are in different communities and neighborhoods throughout the city. So I think that that's very important.
Councillor
Point of order.
Stevenson, you have a point of order?
Particularly with Councillor DiGenova right at the beginning of this, but we're speaking to the referral, not to all the rationale for the motion, simply to the referral at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson, for
I'm
that
speaking
clarification.
to the importance of how important
referring.
this is to come back from staff. So I'm supporting the referral. I'm talking about the need for this information and this data. It does concern me that there isn't a date set for when this would come back to us. Perhaps Councillor Affleck is going to add a date, perhaps someone else will. But that being said, I do very much support this. And as someone who has worked in non-market housing and with nonprofit organizations and in the private sector in development, I think it's very important. One of the questions that nonprofit organizations get asked quite frequently is specifically, what is the need? And Vancouver Coastal Health doesn't provide those numbers to city councils all the time. I mean, they're forever changing. What is the need of different people in the community who need to be housed? So without that, and without BC Housing sharing all of their information together, it's difficult to understand or determine the needs. So I think Councillor Affleck has outlaid a very nice motion here that would help us to achieve that and encourage other organizations. And I appreciate that staff need to be involved in this. So I will be supporting the referral motion that Councillor Reimer has put forward, and I hope that it will lead to this data coming back to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Oops, sorry, Councillor Carr, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, there is a date, I believe in the motion, unless I'm not reading it correctly, that it'll come back with the next housing reset in terms of a report back to us. Okay. Secondly, I think that the goal here, and it's retained in the referral motion by Councillor Reimer, is that we will be getting information back with an emphasis on how the intent of the motion, which is to include more other information that's not currently in our open data sets, but also consolidate that information. And the word consolidation isn't in here. It's, I hope, implicit. It seemed to be the intent of the original motion, and I note that Councillor Reimer did verbally use the word consolidation. So I'm not going to add an amendment at this point, but I just hope that it's clear that this is not just going to create a whole bunch of other single data sets for the missing information that's not currently one of the 8 data sets. That's, and if the word consolidation needs to be added, I would, but I hope it's implicit in the work that's going to go forward. And I also really want to emphasize that ease of access is so important. It is very hard to navigate, to find the open data, in many cases exactly what you want, because they are in disparate files. So again, the consolidation, the ease of access to me are my hope that when we get this report back, that it will not only add the information, but ease the access and make it more consolidated, thus more usable.
All right, thank you. Councillor Jang is next. on there, yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Happy to support the referral to staff to incorporate as part of the work of the housing reset. I do want to caution folks, though. I mean, some of the information that's being required may be confidential. And I, in particular, worried about places like places where battered women are staying. We do not want them identified. Places where there are children who have been abused. So although data is great, it's wonderful to have, there are very good reasons why sometimes they're in separate databases. They are separate that are only accessible to certain people. At the University of British Columbia, where I'm employed, even when we make requests to use databases, we have to fill out extensive questionnaires on ethics to make sure that we're not giving away locations of people. So we may like to have data. I think we have to also understand that there's great responsibility to that data, and we cannot in any way allow data to bring people who are already marginalized, already suffered abuse, to come to further harm. And that has been one of the main issues we had, for example, with some of the battered women's shelters and housing units that are not listed there. So our staff, I'm sure, are very much aware of that, but I think all of us here on council asking for more open data must be aware of some of these considerations that are incredibly, incredibly important in order for people to get on with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jang, and Councillor Ball is next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that all the councillors have made very important points today. I think the most important thing here is that the original motion is responding to a real expressed need in the community for people to understand what has actually happened and to be able to easily access the information that is available. So I do appreciate that Councillor Reimer has referred it to staff and trust staff that they will recognize the concerns that Councillor Jang has brought up, and which of course are important, I think, to everyone, that those who are in danger in any way be protected. But I do think that Councillor Affleck has really touched on a nerve that's in the community where people are confused. I know Councillor DiGenova mentioned both the Disabled and the Seniors Committee, both of whom have expressed a real interest in the material that's here. So I'd like to thank all the councillors, and I heartily support both the original motion and its referral to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Affleck to the referral motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While referral is always frustrating for us, I respect the fact that Councillor Reimer has included reference to my motion in the motion, and that there's clarity, I hope, for staff that they will be using this document, my original motion, as a template or a possible beginning point for what I think is required based on the conversations that I've had with staff and with the public, and I think it's based on our needs. I think that to address Councillor Jang's issue, I had referenced privacy issues in my original motion, so I agree with Councillor Jang that privacy is utmost and that we want to make sure that we protect the vulnerable citizens that might be living in these residents. So I'll support the referral as part of the reset. Hopefully that will be coming to us soon, and that does give us a timeline. And I think that, again, my original motion was meant to provide a clarity for all of us and the public and staff, and have a one place to go if that's possible, as opposed to what Councillor Reimer said, 8 or 9 places to get this information. That is not open access and open information. That is confusing. So hopefully through the housing reset and through the wording in my motion and the comments by the rest of council here, we will have a real solid database that we'll able to access and make evidence-based decisions here at City Council moving forward. Thank you.
And thank you. And closing comments, Councillor Reimer on the referral motion.
Thank you, Mayor Robertson. Well, I hope it was clear from the outset, Councillor Affleck, the purpose of the referral certainly wasn't to be frustrating or to turn what you've described as a non-partisan motion into partisan. It was to achieve the intent I think you had in mind, although it doesn't specifically speak in your motion to consolidation or trying to diminish the duplication. And I did want to rise on a couple clarification points on the issue of consolidation. It may be that one mega database isn't the answer. It may be that we still do need more than one. I think 8 is extreme and 9 is beyond extreme. So I do think trying to consolidate would be good. I would note to a couple of the councillors' points, Councillor DiGenova in particular, there is a comprehensive non-market housing inventory already on the city's website that lists all 25,655 units and subdivides them by seniors, families, other neighborhood. It has the housing provider. It has a lot of information already, but the fact that we don't know this speaks to a lot of what people have raised, which is the ease of finding it and the ease of access of using it. And you can then take this, cross-reference the rental database, and then go on VanMap and find out all the rezoning and development application. But I think you'd have to be incredibly geeky to know all that and to want to do that. I think it should be easy to find in one place. So I'm hoping that through Councillor Affleck raising the issue and consolidating all of the points people have made, I don't think either of us spoke to it in our motions, but I think hopefully council or staff are taking the point that ease of access is really the critical point here. So if there's a way for them to bring that back with the housing reset, I was just looking up the staff presentation from before the break. It sounded like it was expected back in November 2017. Yes? Okay, so that would be the timeline I was expecting on it. And I'm glad to see the motion moving forward.
Okay, I think we're ready for question. No more speakers to it. So do we need to vote on the screens? We are going to vote on screen on the motion to refer this back to staff. Councillor Affleck's non-market housing projects data set motion referred to staff to report back. Councillor Stevenson. Okay, we've got all 10 votes in favor. Unanimous support for the referral motion. So we'll see all of that coming back in the weeks or months ahead. Thank you for that, Council. That is it for our motions on notice. We are going to come back now. I think our city manager is ready to respond to questions on administrative report number 1. Questions from Councillor Carr on that specific motion. Mr. City Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and Council. I actually have our city engineer on the way, but I will I'll summarize what I've learned since the last since your question, and if there are further questions, he'll be in momentarily and he can answer additional questions. The bottom line is that the value of that was set under certain alignment of the lease area, and this is an adjustment to that. When we did this adjustment, the real estate group did a reevaluation to make sure that the value was still the same and determined that it was, and so there wasn't a reason to go back and ask for more. Really, this was an adjustment. It wasn't a largening, or it wasn't a significant change. It was really looking at where those pillars needed to be. So that was we did do an assessment and determined that there was an additional value. So that's where we landed. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Okay, question answered. So we need a motion moved and seconded as part of the package. So we need the question on that. All those in favor on administrative report number 1? Are there any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you for that. Thanks for the response from staff. And that means we're on to notice of motion, new business, inquiries, and other matters. We have 2 items under this section of the agenda, and the first is the motion regarding park rangers funding, which is put on table here by Councillor Affleck and seconded by Councillor DiGenova. And that is brand new. Notice is being called, so we will see that in 2 weeks at our next council meeting. That will go on to the agenda of motions now on notice. And the second piece is a request for leave of absence for Councillor Stevenson for meetings to be held October the 24th, 2017. A mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor DiGenova, seconder. Someone want a second? Councillor Reimer. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And that is all for this agenda. That was a fairly light agenda for the first one back from the summer break, but they will only get more intense from here, I'm sure. City staff bringing forward a lot of work in the ensuing meetings. That means we are ready for, I'm sorry, we don't. And most, in terms of new business inquiries and other matters, we have Councillor Reimer. Were you left over on that, or are you? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Carr, given that was a leftover. Councillor Carr.
Great, thank you. Well, I was expecting Councillor, maybe she will already say it, but I will say it too, just to give notice to everyone in the city and certainly all of us here that we have a very important day coming up on Sunday, which is our second walk for reconciliation. And the first one was unbelievable for those who attended. It was really an absolutely remarkable, despite pouring rain, example of people really coming together around a very important cause. And I understand this Sunday there's no forecast for rain yet, which is good, but just making sure everybody knows it's a 9:30 start at the Queen Elizabeth Plaza with speeches at Strathcona Park at 11. My second point arises out of a discussion that's been happening through the media, but also I was alerted by a resident of the city who received a letter from the mayor's office regarding this, and that is about the bid for the Amazon headquarters, the new headquarters that people are talking about. And in that letter, it was stated that the mayor stated that the Vancouver Economic Commission and the City of Vancouver, in partnership with other stakeholders, intend to put forward a bid. So I have a series of questions. I would like a report back on this, but my questions start with really wanting, again, I want this in a report back, and I'd like that report back to somehow be able to be made public. Did I miss something? Like, how was council informed about this? This is a very, very major undertaking by the city. So I want to know, if I missed something, let me know. But how and when was council informed about this bid going forward? I'm wondering why it's not on our agenda in the first opportunity, because the bid closure date is October the 19th. This is very quick, and this is, as I say, it has huge impact in my mind on the city. Huge impact, not just we're talking, 50,000 jobs. In terms of housing and transportation and every sort of element, I'm wondering where we as councillors have the chance to be able to talk about this bid, which departments are involved in the bid process, especially obviously housing and transportation is of concern to me. And I'd like to know what the analysis is around the impacts that this will have, both positive and negative. But I have real concerns around the impacts on housing affordability and housing in general, the impacts on brick and mortar stores, in terms of our small business and the business improvement associations, and the impact on transportation. So I'm happy to provide those details in an email form if that would be easier, Mr. City Manager, for you. But those are the things I'd like to see covered, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, maybe I will respond first as the chair of the Vancouver Economic Commission, and our CFO, Patrice MP, also sits on the board of the Economic Commission as well. And this bid is being led by the Economic Commission. The Economic Commission is charged with responsibility of looking at new economic opportunities and job creation opportunities, and is constantly outdoing recruiting, seeking investment, and companies locating here in Vancouver, setting up offices or investing in Vancouver companies. So this fits completely within the scope of what the Vancouver Economic Commission does. And I know there was a meeting convened with various stakeholders, including Metro Vancouver, and as the scale of this bid clearly has more regional context to it. And so at this point, it's the work is underway between the Economic Commission and stakeholders. And if there was to be a City of Vancouver request coming forward within that, it would come back, obviously, to us at the city. But currently it fits within the context of the work that the Economic Commission does, looking at opportunities for companies to locate offices or move their operations to Vancouver, which is work that they do basically on behalf of the city as the primary funder of the Economic Commission. So that's, if there is any specific requests that obviously impacts the city more directly, that would come back from the Economic Commission. I don't know if, Mr. City Manager, if you wanted to add anything in terms of staff support on that process. My sense at this stage is that's down the line as a next step if needed, if there is a more direct to-do for the city. Mr. City Manager, anything further on that?
I think you hit most of it, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I'd add is that we did, a couple days after the bid came out, I did convene a meeting with some of our key department heads just to understand the implications, particularly from the real estate side, because the bid calls for looking at different sites. So we're trying to understand what commercial sites are under development currently in the city, buildings, and of course from a planning perspective, from what sites they know are under development and could be a part of a bid. As you've indicated, the VEC is really leading the charge, and so we would see ourselves as supporting them with information. I think they are preparing a memo to council to give an update on that answers, I think, most of those questions, Councillor Carr. So they're really in the information gathering stage at this point to understand the implications, understand what role the province might want to play. So they're currently engaging with stakeholders, trying to understand what the implications might be. Their perspective is that it would have to be a regional bid, and so I know they're meeting with Metro Vancouver, with Surrey and other municipalities. So those discussions are ongoing at this point, and I'm happy to make sure that you get a memo and then follow up with a discussion as their research continues.
Okay, and we're on to Councillor Jang. New business, inquiries, other matters?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First, I just really wanted to rise and thank our City Hall security staff, the City Manager and the Vancouver Police Department for the wonderful job they did on the big rally we had here at City Hall when the neo-Nazis came and were well drowned out by thousands upon thousands of people talking about inclusivity and diversity. And it was quite an event. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for coming home from holidays. You were unshaven and you grabbed the plane and came down to speak to the crowd. It was quite amazing. Thank you for that. And, you know, being obviously ethnically Chinese, I was a target of some of the stuff that from some of the commentators on the racist side, for example, Councillor Louie and I, for example. And glad to say I felt very safe and I felt very inclusive. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared. So I really want to thank everyone across the city, as well as our police service, as well as our security service here for the great job they did. I think it sent a very clear message to the world that Vancouver is an inclusive place. So thank you to all of you. And thank you, Mr. City Manager in particular, for making sure that happened. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jang. And Councillor Reimer's next.
Thanks, Mayor Robertson. I had a few items. The first I had was a thanks to staff. There was an issue regarding a bus stop that was closed in the downtown east side that was in an area of town where there's a lot of mobility issues, creating quite some safety concerns for residents. And I know our staff were quite instrumental in negotiating a solution with TransLink and reopening the stop quickly, so I appreciate that. I also had a question for staff regarding TransLink and relating to the Great Northern Way, False Creek Flats area, and specifically the new transit station down there that would be part of the Broadway corridor. The plans for the Millennium Line extension, when we approved the plan for the Great Northern Way campus, we did not know at the time what TransLink's plans were for the routing of the Millennium Line extension. We have since found out from TransLink that could have a significant impact on 525 Great Northern Way, and I would like some information on how and when TransLink came to that decision and what options are available at this point for the retention of the existing building. I understand, and I'm sort of piecing this together a bit through rumors, so I apologize if it's misinformation and why I was hoping to get a consolidated memo on it. That there might be a plan to replace the building, but I'm curious as to what the plan for retention could be of the existing building. And then a couple just things for information. I did want Council to know that I did write a letter to Minister Selena Robinson, who is responsible for many things, one of which is municipal affairs, and in that capacity would be responsible for bringing in a campaign finance reform bill that would enable municipalities to be able to ban union and corporate donations and set contribution limits, amongst other things. I had a very good discussion with her, followed it up with a letter, and I remain quite optimistic that we might have campaign finance reform, that we will have campaign finance reform rules in place by the end of this year. So I'm happy to keep Council updated on that. If you're at UBCM and you run into Minister Robinson, any minister really, but Minister Robinson particularly, as well as Minister Eby, who is responsible in the AG capacity for the legal components of it, it'd be good to emphasize the urgency of that to them. And of course, yes, I'm looking forward to seeing you all out at the Walk for Reconciliation, hopefully a dry or not quite as wet walk this year.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. I'm not sure if it's Ms. McKenzie that I address this to or the City Clerk, but it's regarding the election. We learned on the break that the mail-outs, the voter cards, would not be sent out to all residents of this city, and I was surprised by this information. And I'm wondering if we can find out why that isn't possible, what impact that might have on the election turnout. This would mean, you know, is there any other way that we can reach every resident in the city? I don't think so. You know, I'm just concerned that there will be people who won't know the election's happening because perhaps they don't have a television or read the newspaper or listen to the radio, and all they have is Canada Post, and we may lose the kind of traction that we got in the last election with a record turnout. So if Ms. McKenzie can answer those questions, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to answer those questions. With respect to the voter information card, the voter information card has very limited information on it. The main purpose of the voter info card is that it has a barcode for quicker processing of voters. So in place of that voter information card, what we are sending to every household is a brochure, fold out, that contains that information plus much more. So it's providing all the locations of the voting places, the dates for voting, identification requirements, what the candidate, the names of the candidates, the parties, and so on and so forth. So it contains much more information, and that information will be sent, as I said, to all households on September 21st. The thing that it doesn't include is a barcode, and for by-election, we felt that it wasn't necessary, and with the piece of information that we are sending out, we were able to send it as, I think it's called ad mail, and it's a much less expensive way to get the information out to the public than the card, which would have to be sent to each individual under regular mail. And the cards for a general election cost in a neighborhood of $500,000.
Okay, and the just for clarity then, for the election itself, the results will be, curious on the results will be provided, and I had another question but I lost it. The results of the election will be presented when? On the same day or?
As per usual, the election occurs on October 14th, so the results will be made available that evening once all the polls have reported.
So not having barcodes and all that stuff doesn't affect
a barcode is for the processing of voters when they go into a voting place.
Okay, and our policy regarding low barrier, information when you show up there. Currently, in the previous elections, all you had to do is bring your voter card. You didn't have to actually have ID necessarily. Now, with no voter card, and if a resident doesn't have ID, how do we know they live anywhere?
They will have ID. There is a requirement that under the charter. No, under the charter, they are required to provide information. The voter information card, as it's addressed to was addressed to each individual with the barcode that served. It was accepted as a piece of identification. In place of that, they will be required to still meet the requirements of the charter, which specifies the identification requirements.
And what is that? I'm thinking about,
Well,
for example,
voters
downtown
can go to,
side
I encourage voters to go to our website to take a look at the specifics, but amongst other things, there's driver's license, there's, hydro bills, like there's quite a list. There's passport, there's all sorts of information, identification that meets the requirements.
Okay, I'm just concerned about some of the residents who have challenges with any kind of identification. And I'm sure my fellow councillors, Councillor Reimer obviously touches on this and on a regular basis, that they won't have any identification if they don't have a voter card. And how will they be able to vote then?
Many of those individuals didn't receive a voting card in the first place. Those individuals, there's declarations that as one piece of identification that an individual is able to bring, and that's where there is a sworn declaration as to who they are, and that's been an accepted piece of identification since I think 2011, I think it was.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to reiterate, when we were evaluating the options between the card and the full flyer, Councillor, the determination was having a full flyer with candidates, voting locations, all of the information about, for folks that aren't paying a ton of attention and you just get a card in the mail, it doesn't really tell you much about what's going on, that it's a by-election, or who the candidates are, or where you can vote. We felt that the flyer was a more fulsome way to get all of that information across, especially given the tight timelines here. So that was, we went through a thorough analysis and determined that that was a better way to make sure that people understood this is a by-election, who the candidates are, and where they can vote. So that was the process, and I just want to reiterate, it goes to every single household via snail mail.
Okay, we're on to Councillor Reimer. Did you have a little bit more? Still got time on your ticker.
Well, when I push the button, I just really wanted to emphasize, although the city clerk did get to it, that you can use a sworn affidavit, and that there are a number of organizations that work very closely with the city to ensure that that opportunity is available to them in the lead up to an election. So should you be listening to this, you can use everything from a hydro bill, a cell phone bill, anything with an address on it, or in the event that you have none of those things, you can also go to organizations like Pivot Legal or the Carnegie Community Center, and they have lawyers on hand during election periods to assist you in ensuring that you'll be able to vote.
Okay, that is all of our notice of motion, inquiries, and new business and other matters. So we have completed the agenda before us, and we need a motion to adjourn this council meeting. Councillor Deal just moves, seconder for that. Someone want a second? Councillor Jang. All those in favor? Wakey, wakey. And all those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? That carries. This council meeting is adjourned. We will meet in camera at 11 o'clock sharp. 11 o'clock sharp. And thanks to journalism students from Langara for being here, putting in the time. Sorry it wasn't a more action-packed meeting. There will be more to come.